Imagine a vast land ruled by a Tsar. This was Russia in the early 1900s. Tsar Nicholas II held absolute power. He lived a life of luxury and extravagance. Meanwhile, his people struggled. Most Russians were peasants. They toiled on land owned by wealthy nobles. Life was difficult, food was scarce, change was in the air. Russians grew increasingly unhappy. They saw the Tsar as out of touch. Resentment towards the aristocracy grew. People craved a fairer system. They wanted a say in their government. Revolutionary ideas began to spread. Groups like the Bolsheviks emerged. They demanded radical change. They called for an end to the Tsarist regime. The stage was set for revolution. World War I added fuel to the fire. The conflict, which began in 1914, quickly escalated into one of the deadliest wars in history. Nations from across the globe were drawn into the fray, leading to unprecedented levels of destruction and loss of life. The war's impact was felt far and wide, but few countries suffered as much as Russia. Russia joined the war in 1914. The Tsarist regime, under the leadership of Tsar Nicholas II, believed that participating in the war would bolster national pride and strengthen the monarchy. However, the reality was far different. The Russian military was ill-prepared for the scale and intensity of the conflict. Soldiers faced harsh conditions, inadequate supplies, and poor leadership. The war effort proved disastrous. Millions of Russians died, the economy crumbled, people faced starvation, the Tsar's leadership faltered. The front lines were scenes of unimaginable horror, with countless lives lost in brutal battles. Back home, the situation was equally dire. The war drained resources, leading to severe shortages of food and basic necessities. Long bread lines became a common sight, and the suffering of the civilian population grew unbearable. He appeared weak and incompetent. Tsar Nicholas II's inability to effectively manage the war effort and address the needs of his people eroded public confidence in his rule. His decisions were increasingly seen as misguided and out of touch with the harsh realities faced by ordinary Russians. The Tsar's image, once one of strength and stability, was now one of vulnerability and failure. His decision to take personal command of the army backfired. In an attempt to rally his troops and restore confidence, Tsar Nicholas II took direct control of the military operations. However, this move only served to further highlight his lack of military expertise and strategic acumen. The front lines continued to suffer devastating losses, and the Tsar's presence did little to improve the situation. It isolated him further from the people. As the war dragged on, the disconnect between the Tsar and his subjects grew wider. Public protests and anti-Tsarist demonstrations became more frequent and more intense. The people of Russia, already burdened by the hardships of war, began to openly question the legitimacy of the Tsarist regime. The once unshakable bond between the ruler and the ruled was now irreparably damaged. The war exposed the fragility of Tsarist rule. The immense pressures of World War I laid bare the weaknesses of the Tsarist system. The grand palaces and symbols of imperial power began to crumble, both literally and figuratively. Revolutionary sentiments, once simmering beneath the surface, now erupted into full-blown movements. The war had not only devastated the nation but also set the stage for a seismic shift in Russian history. In February 1917, revolution erupted in Petrograd. Workers went on strike. They protested food shortages and the war. The Tsar ordered troops to quell the unrest. Instead, many soldiers joined the protesters. The Tsar lost control of his forces. Isolated and facing overwhelming opposition, he abdicated. The Romanov dynasty, which had ruled Russia for centuries, came to an end. Section 5. The Provisional Government. A New Hope. Briefly. A provisional government replaced the Tsar. It promised democratic reforms. It vowed to continue the war effort. However, it failed to deliver on its promises. The war dragged on. Conditions worsened. The provisional government lost popular support. It proved unable to govern effectively. Russia descended into chaos. Section 6. The October Revolution. The Bolsheviks take charge. The year was 1917, and Russia was in turmoil. The country was exhausted from years of war, and the people were desperate for change. Amidst this chaos, a group of revolutionaries saw an opportunity to reshape the future of their nation. The Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, saw an opportunity. Lenin, a charismatic and determined leader, had a vision for Russia that was radically different from the existing order. He believed that the power should be in the hands of the workers and peasants, not the elite. Lenin promised peace, land, and bread. These simple yet powerful slogans resonated deeply with the war-weary and impoverished population. The promise of peace was particularly appealing, as the ongoing World War had brought nothing but suffering and loss to the Russian people. He appealed to the exhausted masses. The promise of land was a direct appeal to the peasants, who made up the majority of the population and had long been oppressed by the landowning class. Bread symbolized the end of hunger and the beginning of a new era of prosperity. In October 1917, the Bolsheviks seized power. The revolution was swift and decisive. The Bolsheviks, with their well-organized and disciplined forces, managed to take control of key locations in Petrograd, the capital city, with minimal resistance. They overthrew the provisional government in a nearly bloodless coup. The provisional government, which had been struggling to maintain order and continue the war effort, was no match for the determined Bolsheviks. The Winter Palace, the seat of the provisional government, fell with little resistance. The Bolsheviks established a new government. This new government was based on the principles of socialism and aimed to create a classless society. The Bolsheviks immediately set about implementing their vision, nationalizing industry, and redistributing land to the peasants. They called it the Soviet Union. This new state was meant to be a union of Soviets or workers' councils representing the interests of the working class. The Bolsheviks believed that this new system would bring about true equality and justice for all. A new era had begun. The October Revolution marked the beginning of a new chapter in Russian history. The Bolsheviks' rise to power would have profound and lasting effects on Russia and the world, shaping the course of the 20th century. Section 7. The Rise of Lenin. Lenin, a shrewd strategist, consolidated power. He withdrew Russia from World War I. He nationalized land and industry. He implemented a communist system. The Bolsheviks, now known as the Communists, faced opposition. A civil war erupted. The Communists emerged victorious. Lenin's ideology shaped the Soviet Union. His legacy would impact Russia for decades to come. Section 8. The formation of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union emerged from the ashes of Tsarist Russia. It was a new kind of nation. It was based on the principles of communism. The state controlled all aspects of life. The Soviet Union became a global superpower. It challenged the existing world order. The Russian Revolution had a profound impact on the world. Section 9. A world transformed. The Russian Revolution sent shockwaves across the globe. It was a seismic event that not only altered the course of Russian history, but also had profound implications for the entire world. The revolution began in 1917, driven by widespread discontent with the autocratic rule of Tsar Nicholas II, economic hardship, and the immense toll of World War I. The Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, seized power, promising peace, land, and bread to the war-weary and impoverished masses. This promise resonated far beyond Russia's borders, igniting the imaginations of oppressed people everywhere. It inspired other revolutionary movements. The success of the Bolsheviks emboldened revolutionaries in other countries, who saw the possibility of overthrowing their own oppressive regimes. In Germany, the Spartacist uprising sought to emulate the Russian example, while in Hungary, Bela Kun led a short-lived communist government. Across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, anti-colonial movements drew inspiration from the Russian Revolution, seeing it as a model for their own struggles for independence and social justice. It led to the rise of communism as a major political force. The establishment of the Soviet Union in 1922 marked the beginning of a new era in global politics. Communism, as an ideology, began to spread, challenging the existing capitalist order. The Comintern, or Communist International, was established to promote worldwide communist revolution, and communist parties began to form in countries around the world, advocating for radical social and economic change. It sparked the Cold War. The ideological clash between communism and capitalism led to a prolonged period of geopolitical tension between the Soviet Union and the United States, known as the Cold War. This era was marked by a series of proxy wars, nuclear arms race, and intense political and military rivalry. The world was divided into two blocks, with countries aligning themselves with either the Soviet-led Eastern Bloc or the US-led Western Bloc. The world was forever changed. The impact of the Russian Revolution and the subsequent rise of the Soviet Union reshaped the 20th century. It influenced the course of World War II, contributed to the decolonization process, and played a significant role in the development of international institutions like the United Nations. The ideological battle between communism and capitalism also spurred technological and scientific advancements, as both superpowers sought to demonstrate their superiority. The fall of Tsarist Russia remains a pivotal event in history. The abdication of Tsar Nicholas II and the subsequent execution of the Romanov family marked the end of centuries of autocratic rule in Russia. This dramatic shift not only transformed Russian society but also sent a clear message to other monarchies and empires. Absolute power could be challenged and overthrown. The fall of the Romanovs symbolized the end of an era and the beginning of a new uncertain future. It teaches us about the power of ideas. The Russian Revolution was not just a political and social upheaval, it was also an intellectual revolution. The ideas of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, which had been largely theoretical, were put into practice on a massive scale. This experiment in building a socialist state demonstrated the profound impact that ideas can have on the real world. It sparked debates and discussions among intellectuals, politicians, and ordinary people about the nature of society, governance, and justice. It reminds us that even the mightiest empires can crumble. The Russian Revolution serves as a powerful reminder that no empire, no matter how mighty, is invincible. The collapse of the Russian Empire, followed by the fall of other empires in the 20th century, underscores the fragility of political power. It highlights the importance of addressing the needs and aspirations of the people, as neglecting them can lead to unrest and ultimately, revolution. The lessons of the Russian Revolution continue to resonate today, reminding us of the potential for change and the enduring power of the human spirit.